Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, there's been a lot happening and there's a lot to talk about. Mainly that Arsenal are once again the most hated club in the world. We will talk about it at length. Is their agenda against Arsenal? Not only that, we'll be looking at the other things that didn't really matter because the Arsenal Spurs game seemed to be the only thing that mattered this weekend, and the other things were secondary. But that's all to come. Great panel, and here we go. 6 to 1 football show on FTV Sports.
Never give up on us. Now we're on the road to you. Right now, all our dreams can be made. And we'll be kings of football again. England!
Okay. First of all, welcome everyone to the show. Regular, my partner in crime, Ian. How you doing today, mate?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I bet you're very happy, man. I mean,
I think there was something else happening this weekend. But
when are you ever unhappy? I mean, I've never seen you unhappy. That must be because you're a Man City fan.
But you've only known me a few years. There's been decades before that. I was very grumpy.
Yeah, no one remembers those now. Linton, he's always unhappy because he's a Spurs fan. How you doing, Linton? You okay, mate?
I'm happy. I'm good. I'm good.
It's
Cheers,
good
Ollie.
to have you back, mate. We haven't had you on in a while. It's been Christmas and stuff like that. It's been great to have you back.
Good to be
And
back.
Adam, my boy, regular on the show, doesn't really miss a beat, do you, Adam, these days?
Try not to, do my best. Keep my ear to the ground, Ollie. You know me.
I know, and I know you were extra excited because Linton was on this one, and
It's always a treat to see Linton, isn't it?
That's it. And so we start off at the most talked about thing. I actually can't believe the kind of hoo-ha, the circus that went about this. I actually found it absolutely hilarious, just by the whole reaction to it. So that's where we're going to start. I'm going to start with you, Linton. So,
Okay.
obviously, Spurs Arsenal got called off. What was your initial reaction to that?
Fuming. I think that you just took the piss of the rules, and I don't even know where to begin, actually. I mean, it came to on Friday, and there were some rumours about it might be called off, and I thought they're never going to call it off. We've got one, maybe two COVID cases, load of injuries, players at the AFCON, and I still can't believe it. You called it off, and the fact that earlier in the week you had players that you.
Well, hold on one second. We didn't call it off. We just asked to have it called off, and it was authorised.
Well, and then taking, the Premier League have got a lot to answer for. But the fact is, it's a derby. You go for it. And I still can't believe if Spurs did that, I'd be embarrassed. I'd be like, come on. Like, this is the one fixture that we all talk about. Like, this is it. It's for derby. The one fixture on the calendar, as soon as fixtures are released, you're like, oh, God, I can't wait. North London derby. And the fact that you called it off a couple of days before,
hang on.
taking advantage of Premier League rules is a piss take.
We did not call it off.
You bottled it. I mean,
we did not call it off.
Well, you did.
We just asked if we could have it called off, and they said yes.
No, that's a technicality.
There's no difference. They could have said no.
I just think it's embarrassing. And then today, you sold someone else today. This is the thing that I don't get. And then what are you going to do?
Went on loan.
Either way, whatever. He's gone. Well, you cancelled his contract, didn't you? And then he's signed Kolasinac.
Yeah,
that's another one.
Yeah.
And then what are you going to do about Liverpool? What are you going to do about Liverpool on Thursday?
I'm hearing
you're not going to postpone that. That won't, because
Lazarus, they'll rise from the dead on Thursday.
Exactly. Oh, what a surprise! What? Because Mane and Salah aren't going to be there. You'll play them. It's a piss take, and I think you're a joke. Anyway, Adam, over to you.
There you go, Adam. What do you say to that?
I'm sure. No, I mean, I was disappointed that I always look forward to a derby, so I was disappointed that it weren't on. I generally work my weekends around the Arsenal game. look forward to it. So I was looking forward to it. I didn't think we necessarily had anything to be scared of. So I don't think Tottenham are at full strength. They don't look like,
That's the thing. I thought we probably would have won the game had we
yeah,
played it.
I mean, it's always hard because it's at theirs, so you never know what's going to happen when you're playing them away. But I didn't feel from the last two performances that we've had against Premier League teams, like being obviously the Man City game.
No, you threw a Premier League team in there as well after losing to Forest in the cup.
No,
that's not forgotten.
I've not forgotten either, and I'm the first one to. I'm a realist, mate. We played shit against Forest. We were terrible against Forest. There's no two ways about that. But in terms of they're not a Premier League team, are they? Tottenham are a Premier League team. I don't know whether I'd consider them to have the same ilk and class as other Premier League teams, but they are.
We finished above you 6 years in a row. Keep going.
6 years. Oh, that's gone quick, mate. That's gone quick.
Forest, but there you go.
But I thought fourth place wasn't a trophy, and but
it's not. You keep going on about that. You're saying that we haven't won a trophy, so we haven't, have we? Anyway, continue. I'm enjoying this.
So I mean, in terms of my own personal opinion about it, I didn't feel like there was any need to call the game off. But obviously, I don't work at the club. In terms of the rules with the Premier League, I think there's been 22 games called off now. Loads of teams have applied for it.
And who was the first team to get
Liverpool, wasn't it?
No, it was Tottenham.
It was Tottenham in December.
Tottenham started all of this.
I'm sure it was Tottenham in December.
We didn't start this at all. The first game, no, we didn't. You idiot!
You were the first ones to get the games called off, mate.
No, we weren't at all.
Let's check it. Let's check it.
We had Burnley called off because there was bad that snowstorm before. We had our game. First game that we had called off was it the Leicester game that we had just before Christmas, which is why we got chucked out of the Conference League, and then we had that called off. And then we tried to replay. I don't know. It wasn't us.
So you're allowed to get games called off, but Arsenal aren't.
Well, we had 10 COVID cases, and we had to close our training ground.
This is the issue, though, because it's in terms of the rules. Yeah.
Oh God! Look, honestly.
But Lynn, you can't say have your thing say over to you and then just not allow me to.
He asked me a question.
My point is that ultimately, I don't agree with the way the Premier League have done this. My opinion would have been that if there was one game going to be cancelled, the Premier League should have said, we're going to pause the whole league for a month, 2 months, let all clubs have a reset because that's the fair thing to do.
Do you think Arsenal took the piss, though? Or do you think Arsenal took advantage of the situation?
This is so I can't say. Maybe they have. I can't say. Ultimately, I think it's the Premier League that are making the decision. You cannot blame any other team. No other team has been blamed in the same way that Arsenal have. We may only have one COVID case, but the rules and the regulations around.
I think they have.
But the rules around asking for a postponement, Lynn, are that COVID has to be a factor in why you're asking. So we didn't set the precedent for this. Leicester, a few games before us, cited injuries in AFCON as well as COVID. We've seen that. No one went mental about Leicester. We've seen that. We've done exactly the same thing as Leicester. We've had the same things to account, AFCON, injuries and a COVID case. Yeah. So the Premier League are the ones that have made this. If people have got an issue with this, one, they've got to look at the Premier League and the rules because there is a problem there. And two, maybe look at Leicester because they're the first team that have done this and have set the precedent to do it for a reason more than just having COVID. So ultimately, I think you could say Arsenal have taken the piss. That's always going to come down to the perspective of if you're a Tottenham fan, and obviously you're living in a delusional state anyway. So you're always going to be thinking.
Well, you've just said that Leicester took advantage of the situation.
I haven't said they took advantage. I said they set the precedent for it, and they did it before.
Okay, so they set the precedent. You did,
yeah.
Okay. Listen, guys. Let's have Ian's view on this as an outsider looking in. With no allegiances. What was your opinion on it?
I do agree with the guys. I think the Premier League have set themselves up to be completely taken advantage of. It was a stupid decision in the first place. So I totally agree with the guys on that one. I think really there's a variety of factors come in, and why I think Arsenal have taken the whirlwind on this one is because they hit every button. It's like in a row. So yes, if you've got COVID, and I agree, Arsenal weren't the ones to start it, but they had some COVID in there. Secondly, if you've got injuries. Thirdly, if you've got key players at AFCON, and the midfield of Arsenal was a big deal on midfield. Then if you've got injuries, and the grand slam, the full house, or a 5-card trick, is if you get a clown sent off as well, that affects the game. So
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
So in effect, some people had a 1-card trick, some had 2 pairs, some had 3 in a row, but nobody apart from Arsenal had the 5-card trick, which was COVID, injuries, AFCON, clown, and
Wow.
whatever the other one. all 5 factors. And I think also then to rub everybody else in terms of the public's nose in it, then quite publicly, Maitland-Niles, who's a good player, a very good player who'd get into a lot of Premier League teams. I really wanted Palace to sign him. They let him go out on loan to Roma. There was another guy, I can't remember, who went out on loan. And today, if they really thought they were victims, they should have had either done it undercover or not let Kalashnik go off on loan as well. To an extent, that is taking the piss and rubbing the public's nose in it. So the reason I think Arsenal have taken the biggest amount of stick is because they've played every card that there was, not just injuries, AFCON or COVID, but they've also had the standing off as well. I would say, and I said this to Ollie, I thought Arsenal played out of their skin against Liverpool. It was the most energy-sapping performance I've seen in such a long time. It was self-inflicted a little way by getting Xhaka sent off in the first half, but they were wrecked. They were knackered. And if you were going down the bookies the next day about whether the Arsenal would have a team that was even intact to play Spurs, the chances are they were going to clutch every straw in the book because they would have been absolutely knackered. I also felt right at the very beginning when this COVID excuse to cancel games coincided with AFCON. If you could look at who were the teams that were affected by AFCON the most, I felt
Exactly.
we've got shallow squad or their key players like Liverpool.
Would you not say, though?
What I'd say is I would always have expected them to go crying.
Looking at the other side of the coin, though, to all you guys, is that when we do play Spurs, they could have a stronger side than they do now. So it could work in their favour. We should have got the Brentford game got called off for us.
Yeah, that's
but it
another.
didn't.
But
We've
the
had multiple
beginning of the
COVID
season,
cases and played on, including our manager.
So
and
is
us.
multiple 1 or 2?
No, we had loads of players. We had about 10 players with COVID.
Oh,
When
that
you
is,
got
that
the
is
game
an
called off this week,
exaggeration.
And we,
Did you
well,
have 1
it
or
was
2?
It was
I had one this
accumulation.
week.
It was an accumulation which got our players injured. There was a lot of factors.
But that's got nothing to do with it.
Well, it did. That's what I read online.
It was about the whole.
It's
principle
accumulation.
said
That's they use that as part of the
That's a
COVID.
joke.
But then, because I say, with the point you made, Ian, with having that, 5-card trick, there is an argument to say, well, that gives Arsenal more reason because they've got 5 solid reasons why they are lacking players and why they can't fill the full
Only
squad.
So
Only
injured
one.
players,
My opinion-
suspension.
Yeah,
None of
my
that is
opinion
that's
on
not a
it.
legitimate
My
reason.
opinion that I said before any of this was Arsenal with the other teams, and I like to have integrity, so I still have the same opinion, is that all of the clubs have got enough eligible players that they can field. And
Yeah, I agree.
whether that means playing youth players, academy players, that's what they should be doing.
I would say that in Spain,
either that or take a
in
pause
Spain-
and let the whole league have a month off.
In Spain, they haven't had one game called off because they've said you have to fill it with youth team players. Now, if they had said that from the start, then Spurs, you would have had to play with your youth team, and you've got no youth team anyway, so probably would have been worse for you. And it would have been fair across the board. But let's park that there. It's done. It's over, guys. The game's been postponed. Everyone can
Jokers.
hate Arsenal as much as they want, but we will come back to it, I'm sure, at another stage. It
I
is
don't
lovely
think-
to see
I don't think
everyone
it's
cry
hate.
about it.
I don't think it's hate.
Oh, yeah, it is.
I think
No one
it's
else got this
absolute
upset about
hatred.
anyone else. No one got
Arsenal
upset
are
when
the
Spurs
team-
did it.
Arsenal are the team that epitomised the mess the Premier League's got everyone in.
It was
That's
also
what-
because it was a high-profile game. It was a really
Yeah,
high-profile
it was.
game. It was, and also Sky
you don't
made a
run.
big song and dance.
It's
of it
not the
because
end
it
of the
was
world, though, is
Sunday.
it?
You don't
It's
run
not
away
the
from
end.
the derby.
It's not the end
You
of the
play-
world. The
You
game
play
will-
on whatever.
Exactly,
You play on
exactly,
whatever.
Ian.
The game will
Exactly,
get
Ian.
played.
You don't
But
run from derby.
Then why did Tottenham not play in their games and they have COVID? Anyway, Man City haven't had any games called off due to their COVID, but that might be because They've got billions and billions of pounds and a massive squad.
First team squads,
God, I
didn't
knew he was going to go there.
City struggled
There's-
early in the season because they were the team that had COVID just on pre-season. Remember, De Bruyne got it. De Bruyne got it at the Euros, and didn't come back in the same with Foden, if you remember. And City got off to a poor start. Just a
I
thought.
mean, but you've got plenty of players to fill those positions. But let's look at City versus Chelsea. Let's review it.
We don't blow
It's-
50 million on it.
I'll start with you, Ian. Is it over now? Is the league over? We done. It's wrapped up in the bag. 13 points.
Not quite. I think it's wrapped up in terms of every team apart from Liverpool. When City won the league last season, I thought that was against, of all the leagues that they've won, even that one they just pipped United for 10 years ago. I thought that Liverpool were the strongest team that City have beaten to win a league last season. And I think this season, if they win the league, they'll have beaten a team that could have won the league 4 or 5 times from that team. It'd been remarkable. So if you just look at the stats, Liverpool have played a game less on 45 points. That could put them on 48. So that's only 8 points ahead. All right. Now, City have got to play Liverpool, so there's 5. 5, that's all.
It would be funny, though, if City had a COVID outbreak and then went to
well,
get the game called off.
shit
Got it
happens,
called
you
off.
know?
And no one would say anything. It'd be like, oh, well.
After an international break or whatever
Yeah.
it may be. But it comes down to City lose to Liverpool. There's only 5 points in it. Just a thought.
There's a long way. There's still a long way to go. You know,
There
you
is
never
a long
know.
way to go.
And you've had the City have been brilliant.
Not
Like, you
over.
won 12, 13 games in a row. That's not
Well,
going to
yeah.
continue. You'll drop
And
points.
what
The consistency as well with City, and it's just like even when they don't seem like they're performing at their best, they're still grinding out those results as well, and it's
Wow.
rare you don't see them
And getting
performing
lucky.
well.
They got lucky against Arsenal.
Who did Arteta say out of the 12 games was the hardest game they had? It was Arsenal.
They still
Um,
won though, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah, and that's the point.
it.
Yeah, do you know what I
But
mean?
there's-
It's like
there's
that's
times
what's hard.
when it
You've
doesn't
you've lost twice
I've
this season.
watched
You've
them
lost 2.
lose at home to Palace and
Yeah,
draw
else?
Southampton 0-0. It is possible.
Who else? Someone else beat you at the beginning of the season.
I
though,
think
didn't
it was Tottenham. That was when you won the league after 3 games,
Yeah.
wasn't it? And
Well, it's interesting
Or
you
top.
could say that because even though City did not whinge on about it, if you remember, De Bruyne wasn't in there, Foden wasn't in there. They've got loads of players delayed from the Euros, and they were really quite weak against Spurs. So the fact that
We had our best player out as well. We had no
Yeah.
Kane. We had a lot of players coming back from the Euros as well, and we also had Nuno Espirito Santo as manager.
Great
So we
manager.
were.
Great manager.
Yeah, he was
what-
fresh and there was an energy kick. Anyway, Ollie, City
What-
still turned up.
What did you think of the game against Chelsea, Ian?
God, I thought
It was pretty boring.
the
It was
turning point
boring.
of that 13-game run was when City beat Chelsea at Chelsea, if you remember. And they played beautifully that day. They really did. And that was at that stage, Chelsea looked pretty unbeatable. And they were the solid Germanic team of the Premier League. And before that game last weekend, Chelsea had turned the corner again and they'd started to play quite well. I thought that goal out by De Bruyne was a thing of beauty. City had enough possession. Chelsea fluffed some chances, but I mean, back to when City won the league the season Vincent Kompany retired, and it was on a knife edge, and Kompany at that absolutely blinding goal against Leicester that turned the league. And I wonder when we look back whether that thing of beauty, that goal of De Bruyne, when Kante tried to go in for that tackle and he skipped away from probably the best midfielder in the world and bent that ball round. It was
What I
beautiful.
would say though, Ian, is, and I know Arsenal's quite good at the moment because we're doing something, but the fans were very, very quiet. The Man City fans,
Can I have 2
very
minutes on
quiet.
this? Can I have 2 minutes on this? Right. I was
Coming
in
from
the
you in
gym
the
the other
Emirates.
day,
My God.
and a Newcastle fan came to me and said, "Oh, hey, I see you've got," because I wear a City shirt in the gym, as you do. And he said, "What do you think Newcastle have got in store from their Saudi owners?" And I said, "Okay, I'm going to tell you what they've got in store." When I used to go and watch City in the old days, it was raucous at Main Road. We never had any money. We were nearly bust, but we had one hell of a raucous stadium. We moved to the new ground and we had an Arab takeover with lots of money. Now they invest in the whole of East Manchester, schools, hospitals, but massive world-class leisure facilities. They were the first to dominate women's football, and they invest in that. But what they also did was they took the alcohol in the ground a bit further out, and they actively, massively encouraged families. They really changed the clientele in the ground. So that when you go
So it's the family's fault. It's the families that don't make any noise.
Change the profile. You know, when you're in the States and you go and watch American football or the American sports, and it's all about the families, and there is a really nice, stable atmosphere. It's just different marketing. You know, it is.
I don't know.
It's it when you're winning each week.
And that's, if it's quiet, that's, and you know, it's East Manchester. It's moved away from the tougher demographic part of Moss Side. You know, you're not
doesn't mean the fans can't sing, though. I think it's got to a point where the prawn sandwiches are out, and it's like, yeah.
I think the family bags of Walkers are out, and the low alcohol intake is out, which doesn't half help Spurs.
Well, there you go. It's just down to the alcohol.
It's a different business model. It's a different atmosphere. It's like America more in terms of family atmosphere. But what I would say is, you get American owners at United never invest in the stadium. It's half falling down. And
it always goes back to Man United. This man always goes back to Man United. He can't help it.
You can have Middle Eastern owners.
Ian, I've never done a show with you when you haven't had a pop at Man United, and I like that. I like it a lot. Linton, what do you think of the Man City?
Arsenal should have had a pop at Spurs in the derby, but they didn't turn up.
No.
Yes, Ian. Fucking yes, Ian. I was going to ask what your excuse is for not having an atmosphere at the Emirates.
Actually, our atmosphere is pretty good at the moment.
But agree to disagree. What was the question?
Have you been? When was the last time you've been?
Explaining the lack of noise.
Chelsea.
Actually, the question: City Chelsea. What did you think of the game?
I watched the second half, and it was a bit. I don't know. City are a bit good, aren't they? And the fact that it looked quite comfortable. I'd never really thought, unless Chelsea nicked one on the break, I thought City probably could have scored a couple more, but. It's just a golfing class. For City were fantastic, but
and I'm going to give you a player, and I want your honest opinion on this player.
Go on.
Lukaku. What's happened to him?
Lukaku,
yeah, Lukaku.
Big girl. I can't say that anymore, but you know
what's happened to him. What's happened to the man?
Well, he hasn't been playing every single week, is he? He just needs that run of form, and I don't know. He's still class though, isn't he? I still think he's a great player.
I think 80% of his career he's been Benteke in disguise, and only 20% have we seen sparkles from him. 80% of his career, everyone's, he's had such criticism for his first touch, his lack of work rate.
No, Ian. Inter Milan. He was quite good at Inter Milan. What about you, Adam? What do you think?
He's definitely got the ability. I've said it before, where I think he's like the sort of player that any other league in the world, he will just walk it. Even like some of the stuff that I saw with him, I think for Belgium.
So you think it's the Premier League? You think it's the Premier League just too?
I think it's just the level of consistency you need in the Premier League and the level of like commitment. And there's loads of other things as well in terms of confidence. And there's so many more factors. Whereas I think, other leagues, if you're at a decent team and there's not many strikers like Lukaku that are good with their feet and are as physically able and good in the air. So he's definitely got the ability. But in the Premier League, when you look at him, he becomes maybe like another version of an Andy Carroll type player who has all the physicality, can do something amazing,
great player,
but just doesn't necessarily do it, whereas in another league, and I said this about Martial as well for United, I think it's the sort of player that go to another league and just start bashing goals for fun. But I do think the Premier League is just a different level of football, I think. Maybe
can I ask you about another player, and I'm going to go around in reverse order. So I'll start with you, Adam, who I think is having similar issues, and that's Jack Grealish. Is Jack Grealish going to get back to the level he was at, or is he just in a team full of superstars?
From the Chelsea performance, he's.
I don't think he looked very good, personally.
No, he didn't necessarily. But I don't think it's not a case of not looking like earlier in the season. There's times when he's not looked good and he's not looked effective and he's been a bit of a passenger.
And he missed that sitter, didn't he?
But even in that game, I felt like he was doing the right things. Like there's a couple of chances I think he set up for De Bruyne and stuff that it's just like things aren't coming off for him, but he's moving in the right direction. Whether like I think at City, it's one of those like how long's he got there? You know, if he doesn't start to really make an improvement and it's a noted improvement where fans can go, oh, he warrants the 100 million or so they spent on him, then he probably will end up getting transferred, you know, in a couple of seasons if he can't. But I think based on the Chelsea performance, I think his brain's there. He's trying to do the right things, but it just feels to me like it's gone from being not great performances to better performances where things aren't quite working for him yet. But if he carries on, then, you know, maybe that's all he needs is to, you know, there was one where he like worked into the box, pulled it back to De Bruyne, and De Bruyne like took a step and like kind of, you know, hit quite a fierce shot over. And it's like, if that goes in for De Bruyne, then instantly, you know, Grealish has done something great. He's created a brilliant chance and he's created a goal. So you need to start seeing, you know, things come to fruition for him really to be considered there. But I do think he's moving in the right direction. He's looked better the last couple of times I've seen him than he did at the beginning of the season, to be fair to him.
All right, Linton, what do you think of Grealish? I think he's struggling, and he has said he's struggling. Do you think he's going to?
I think I think it's going to take him a bit of time to adapt to Pep's system. I think, you know, he was it's harsh, but a big fish in a little pool at Villa, and he was the main man. I think it's going to take him time to adapt to how Pep wants him to play. It's completely different. He's got different players around him. It's not going to be all about him at City. He's got to be part of the team, which, you know, how Pep likes to play. And I think he'll come good. A lot of City's signings tend to come good at the end of the first season into the second season, and I think he's going to be a great player. He's absolute quality, and you know what I think about Grealish. I think he's absolute mustard, and I think we'll see a different Grealish, or the Grealish that we saw at Villa towards the end of the season into next. I think it's just a matter of time with him. He'll fit into the system fine, and he's class. It's annoying that it's just got another player. I think it's going to come good, but I think he's quality.
Ian, just struggling a bit.
Yeah, I'm going to say three things. I think the Pep way, distractions, and
because he got done, didn't he? He went out in the rats, didn't he?
I forgot that as well.
And the perils of women. So let's start on the Pep way.
We all have the perils of women.
Pep seems to be very, very effective when players come to him about 19, 20, 21 years old, and he shapes them into, you know, godlike players, whether you're Messi at 16 or whether you're Xavi or Iniesta, etc., or whether you're Sterling or Foden or Bernardo Silva. They're all players who've come at a very young age and found that eventually been molded into the Pep way. So, you know, I agree. I think we'll see a better player second season.
Okay.
The second one is that, and it's interesting in the game where, you know, when you've got some players who are very dedicated, Ronaldo is probably the absolute top of the tree on the very dedicated, very focused, Ibrahimovic, or even Fernandinho, players who, you know, don't do the alcohol, you know, who are very dedicated. They don't lose their way when the bright lights go on. And going to City, living in a hotel, the bright lights have gone on for him.
Oh, is he living in a hotel?
Well, initially, before he gets into his house, yeah.
Doing an Adam Partridge.
I was reading about the... Can you imagine if football was like cricket, right? In that instead of, you know, playing predominantly at home, they go abroad let's say they went to America for a 3-month tour. Could you imagine what a player like Grealish would be like away from home, 3 months in hotels, on the beer? I mean, when you read about the England cricketers staying up all night drinking beer, well, can you imagine what the footy players would do if that's the way?
You don't have to do a lot in cricket, do you? You spend most of the time standing around.
Imagine that. And then the other one is, and it's an interesting one, when John Stones completely and utterly went off the ball as a player, it was when his private life completely collapsed and he split up with his long-term partner and he went off with the girl who was a bit older and all that sort of stuff, yeah? But eventually it's come round. Now, they reckon exactly the same with Rashford. And the main reason is that his private life has gone a bit wobbly. It happened to Foden. And you see it to a variety of players. And
Happens to a
Grealish,
lot of people.
yeah. But Grealish early in the season, remember, he was in the papers. He was playing one girl off against another. And the one he was playing off one was, I don't know, some kind of bloody influence or whatever it might have been. And I think that's got a lot to do with it. I think
You heard it here, Grealish.
And
Sort
you've
your
got
life out.
a stable relationship at home when you perform on the pitch.
Sort your life out, Grealish, and sort it out fast because
Yeah.
you're going downhill, mate. Although you will
Find
probably
yourself,
win,
find
the
yourself a
double.
good woman, listen to Pep, and you'll be fine by next season.
and you'll win the double with Man City this season anyway. Okay, so let's go on to the League Cup, which unfortunately, Linton, you got knocked out.
Preview, is that a review?
Let's review.
City.
We'll review the last game and preview the next one. But let's have a talk about Spurs. I mean, pretty bad in those two legs against Chelsea, weren't you?
Went out of a whimper.
It was pretty bad.
Didn't turn up for another derby in both senses, the first and second leg. It was demoralising.
Why did Matey Boy start the sub keeper, Conte?
I don't know. That's one thing I've never quite understood resting keepers.
There was a few decisions he made in that second leg.
Well, the big one, even bigger than that, was playing Matt Doherty as a left back when he's probably the most one-footed player I think I've ever seen play football. But I don't know. There was a lot of it. You know, we had a few injuries, and it was probably the best.
No COVID then.
A few players with COVID, more than what you had this weekend.
Of course.
You should have applied for a postponement. Then.
You should have, mate. You probably would have got it.
Don't bottle of Derby, never bottle of Derby. We've discussed this.
Losers talk.
Look, what am I going to say? We were
No, it's
absolutely
fine.
terrible.
Let's
and it
look at
wasn't
the
very
teams.
good.
Let's look at the teams that's still in it. So obviously 0-0. Arsenal got a man sent off, which was a bit harsh, but you know he had to go. But I mean, without your Spurs hat on, 0-0 at Anfield, going back to a home leg. Do you think Arsenal have got a good chance in the next game?
We got a good chance. Of course, we got a good chance, but I think I don't know. I mean, we call it off last minute. Bottle it.
Hopefully, just to
They
upset
might.
everyone
Liverpool
else.
got form for that in the cup.
Well, Liverpool.
Yeah, well, that's
right.
it. No, but no one says it when it's Liverpool.
I don't know. I haven't really watched much of the AFCON. Egypt and where's Mane from? Is he Senegalese?
But Liverpool started this.
I don't know if they're doing well. So I don't know. If you do
Liverpool's-
postpone, they could be back. So
Liverpool
doubt you
started this though. They did it against us in the first leg. Adam, obviously I'm going to the game on Thursday if it doesn't get called off. But I feel like the sending off of Xhaka actually helped us in a way because it made us play in a more of a style where we just.
I don't know
weren't
whether I
going-
go as far to say it helped us, but I do think that it was,
it made us get the
without,
0-0.
I'm not like the sort of person to suddenly go, oh yeah, we're the greatest team in the world. But for me, that was one of the best performances I've seen from an Arsenal team. To be the only team, what is it this
True
season
grit.
that's got Liverpool
True
scoring at Anfield with 10 men, players like Callum Chambers, who hasn't played at all.
Yeah,
Rob Holding, who gets a lot of stick, and I really like Rob Holding, and I think he does get a lot of unwarranted stick. They came on and they were outstanding, absolutely outstanding. Like the way, you just can't ask for a better situation because ultimately going into that, you're thinking, if we slip up here, we could easily ship 4 or 5 goals, if not more, against the Liverpool team. And obviously they didn't have the best players. They still had some pretty good players, so they're still a great team. But we just literally frustrated them, completely shut them out. So you would hope if you can go to Anfield and do that with 10 men, that you would be able to get a result similar or better at home with 11 men. It doesn't always work out like that, but very, very encouraging performance. I don't think any neutral would have seen that happen when Xhaka got sent off and thought, oh, Arsenal are going to, I think on the group, Ollie, I said, I believe we could do it. I thought there was a couple of times on the counter-attack.
It wasn't a comfortable watch. I'll be honest.
No, it was. But
It was
then
horrible.
that's I love that though. That's what football is for me. Like that moment when you are so invested, even when your back's against the wall, and because it's just like I would so much rather see that sort of performance. And the same as I've always said, I'd love to see Arsenal play.
I'm looking forward to
try
you
and
getting
score.
knocked out Thursday, and you can go on about how you had that
So
game
what-
against City in January when you played really well, but you lost. And then
Well,
remember
what
that
do-
game
what
when
do-
we drew 0-0 with
It's,
Liverpool? Man,
what's
fuck off.
sad though, Linton, is you have to look forward to,
I've got him.
me saying stuff about that rather
Who,
than looking forward to
who do you know is predict the team? Predict the team for Thursday. Who do you know is fit to play?
I mean, I think we should get it called off personally.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think we need another week.
Walk us-
Get some players back.
Talk us through the team. Talk
Yeah,
us
I'm
through
interested.
the team, chaps. Who's
I'm
fit
interested.
to play on Thursday?
I
you'll
mean,
have
he
Ben
started
White.
with like, in terms of the players that we've got, I think all the players that were in the performance last week
other than
are still
Xhaka.
okay to play, other than Xhaka, obviously, because he's going to be suspended.
So who's
Um,
back from
Is
injury?
Smith Rowe back and Odegaard.
Maybe. We don't know.
Odegaard's got
Odegaard's
COVID,
got
so he's a
COVID.
maybe. He must be like sort of out of isolation by now, you would hope, because it's been,
Yeah.
since last week he was out
He'll
before
prob-
the last
He'll
game.
probably have to play Odegaard in midfield
Yeah.
with Lokonga. Then Tommy Ashley should be back. He had COVID, I think.
Could
Gabriel,
play
Ben
White
White.
in midfield and keep
Nah, I don't think he'd do that. He,
Chambers
can't,
at right back and Tomiyasu at centre back.
he wouldn't break up the partnership. I don't think he would.
Well,
I think
he played a whole season at
Chambers
midfield
would be
with
more
Brian.
likely to play at centre back, I think, if he had to put
Yeah.
his centre back. Like,
No, I
think
think
the way
Chambers would be
Tomiyasu
more
did.
likely in midfield, maybe.
Really?
but-
Do you feel? Yeah, there's that possibility. Yeah, for sure. He has
Could have
played
done
there,
that
hasn't he?
on
Like,
Sunday,
online,
couldn't
but-
you? Really?
I-
But-
We
Well,
could
if
have.
we could have, and we probably would have
Arsenal will
beaten him.
never
So I don't
have a
understand
better
why we called it
chance.
off, mate.
Arsenal will never have a better chance to get to Wembley. They will kick themselves. Liverpool without Mane and Salah, and 0-0 at your own ground. If you don't win, you should kick yourselves. You should be ashamed. This is
I
your
mean,
one
yeah.
chance to get to Wembley. Don't fuck it up.
Hey, we've been to Wembley plenty of times, okay?
I can't remember the last time.
Hey, we won 3 FA Cups in 3 years or 4 years.
Yeah, the last 6 years we've won 3 FA Cups, so it's like
So
Oh,
our
right.
Wembley record's not actually that bad, but getting there,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
League-
And you
League
beat-
Cup-
You
we
beat
League
City in
Cup,
a
we're
League Cup
terrible,
semi.
but-
yeah,
Yeah.
League Cup, we haven't won it since.
Or FA Cup semi, you beat City, didn't you?
yeah. So FA
Ian,
Cup's our competition, isn't it? But like the
Nottingham
well, we
Forest.
say not this season, but yeah.
I was going to say, mate.
If ever you're going to take Liverpool out, it's got to be now. It's got to be
Yeah,
now.
like you would think they are there. For
And
the
you
taking.
know what? I would have rather had Chelsea in the final than had Spurs, because that would have been. It was
I would have loved it.
Great. It's a
Great. You were
spectator. I
dead.
loved it.
You
Got-
probably
got-
would have bottled it the day before and got it postponed or something. So.
Hopefully, because that just really makes people
I would
cry
have loved
about
to have
stuff.
seen that.
I
Spurs
think
Arsenal
Arsenal
final
would draw
have been
this
great.
game and go out on away goals rule.
Not if
I
they
didn't
draw
know-
0-0.
There's no away
Yeah,
goals.
0-0,
or
they
is
go to
there?
penalties.
I
so
don't know about the away goals. Is it
There's
not
no
after
away
extra time
goals.
again?
There is
Chambers-
extra time,
Chambers play
extra
last.
time, and then penalties, but no away goals.
Okay,
No away goals.
that's interesting. Because it
So
was
it-
usually only,
Ian-
only after extra time. Though,
Yeah.
wasn't it,
They
away
seem to
goals?
change it every year.
Yeah.
I'm going to
honestly.
watch it. I'm really looking forward to it.
Who do you think's going to win it?
Back to the question. As long as Arsenal have got most of their players back, including Odegaard, who runs his socks off at the moment, I think Arsenal can just about do it. If I was going to say beware, I think Curtis Jones is getting better and better every game. And I think 1 in 3 games, Jota plays quite well. And you've got to hope it ain't tomorrow, Thursday.
Thursday, that's it.
I think they're the danger guys. I mean, they've got 2 devastating fullbacks who will rip down that flank, but Arsenal are quite good in those positions. So I think Arsenal will just take it. Yeah, I hope they do.
Love that, Ian. Linton, who do you think's going to win?
Liverpool. I think I don't know. I just can't see doing another. I can't see you guys performing like that again. I think that Liverpool will nick it.
Adam?
You know me. I always say what I want to happen, not what I think will happen. So I think Arsenal will win. I want Arsenal to win, and I think we can beat them. We can beat them. And the times we do beat teams like this, like we have with City, like we have with Chelsea, are in semi-finals, are in big cup games, because we don't beat them in the league that often. Do you know what I mean? But we've got a good record against bigger, harder opposition in semi-finals and finals. So I've got faith that we can do it.
Okay, there you have it. I will
Keep
be
the
there
faith.
if it doesn't get called off, of course. So I am a bit nervous about it because you're one step from a final. If we had come out of that game 2-3-0 down, then I would have been like, this is done. But he's going to be on a knife edge. I can see us nicking it 1-0 and holding out again back to all performance. But we will wait and see on Thursday. So loads of other stuff been going on this week. Obviously, another manager's been sacked. Who was the only team that they beat in 13 games? It was Arsenal. Ian, Everton sacked Benitez. A surprise or had to happen?
I think firstly, there's been such great humour. Agent Benitez, all that sort of stuff that's come out. There's been more memes and jokes than I can ever remember. Did it have to happen? Yes, because I think he had to do well at Everton to put the doubters, having come from Liverpool. I think he was. There was a good chance if he didn't get it right, he would get fired. There wouldn't be any tolerance. And yeah, they daren't go down. And at this stage, they need a high-energy manager. Like Mourinho, I just wonder if those morose, defensive, pastime managers have finished. I think, he is like that. He pisses
Didn't
players off.
Benitez win the Champions League, though?
Yeah, but so did Mourinho, and that was quite a few seasons ago. Have those two lost it? They're not motivators. They piss players off. They play boring tactics, and I just think their era is gone. So, yes,
it is gone.
I think it's gone, and I think they need bright, energetic manager to kick ass and keep them in the league.
Who you think they're going to get in as manager?
If I was them, I would go out and I know you're going to, I can't believe me going to say this, but the job that Wayne Rooney has done at Derby has been unbelievable. Unbelievable. His resilience.
You heard it here today first. Ian,
they would be a mid-table team.
Said something
with
positive
7 players
about
on
a Man United player.
It doesn't matter how many players they get wiped out. Rooney seems to be able to get that Derby team to play against multi-million pound teams when he's got nothing. So clearly, I hate to say it because he's a scumbag, but I would, if I was Everton, I'd get Rooney in and
Wayne Rooney.
Imagine Wayne
Remember
Rooney and
the
Duncan
name.
Ferguson. I'd love to be at the staying up party if they manage to stay up. God.
There we go.
Because
All
Dunk, I think Big Dunk's been put into the end of the season, isn't he, tonight?
right. Has he?
I didn't think they said end of the season. I just thought they said temporary.
Oh, I don't know. Do you want my thoughts on it?
Yes,
Yeah.
Linton. Your thoughts.
I thought it was a very bit of a mess, Everton. Like the week before, or a few weeks before, I had the whole Luca Digne leaving, and he clearly gave a lot. When he left, I think it was on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. He gave a swipe at Benitez. They sacked or removed a director of football. They removed a couple of physios, like literally a week and a half ago, back in Benitez to give him more control, and left himself in a position where the fans. His position was untenable.
Linton, just on the Athletic, Everton want to appoint a new manager before Saturday's game with Aston Villa. So
I think, guys, they announced that it's Big Dunk. I don't know.
there's a possibility of head coach Roberto Martinez. This was
Oh,
today.
maybe
If they appoint Martinez and Thierry Henry, they are mental.
Maybe they're putting Duncan Ferguson. I could have
This
sworn
is
I heard it on the radio earlier that he was announced, but maybe not.
But they just didn't say for how long and whether it was temporary. Or not.
Okay.
Duncan
Hey,
Ferguson
playing
was
tomorrow.
interim manager for 4 matches for Ancelotti.
Anyway,
Appoint Martinez and Henry, they'll go down.
I've got no idea where they go. Like, I don't know. They've tried that route with Benitez and Ancelotti, big name manager. I don't know. I can't see why Martinez would leave. To be honest, they handed him out last time, and then Martinez has got the potential of a ridiculously good team with Belgium and the potential of leading them to a World Cup. I just don't understand why I'd want to go back to Everton unless it's
He has illusions
money
of
talks.
grandeur, does Martinez. He has illusions of grandeur.
But I don't know. Like, I don't know where Everton go. They've been dreadful. I've watched them a couple of times recently.
Except
and
in
my
one game.
word.
Except for one game.
They
Yeah,
were still
maybe.
pretty dreadful against us. We were just worse.
It
I
was-
can't believe it. I can't believe we let them beat us. And with that, in 13 games, they lost.
Oh,
They
yeah,
beat
I know.
Norwich.
They beat Norwich. They got beat by Norwich.
It's mad, isn't it? Okay, Adam, sorry.
Mind you, if there's any comfort, City got beaten by Norwich the last time Norwich were in the Premier League.
There you go. That
Yeah,
is
it
a
did.
comfort actually, Ian. I quite like that.
I think Ian's point about, like the Mourinho and the Benitez manager, I think that's quite a pertinent one, because something that I've noticed that it was actually mentioning Henry as well. Like, it's quite interesting. I read something about him the other day, and he was saying, when he was a player, if he didn't get picked in that era, you would never speak to the boss about it. You would just accept that you weren't picked for that game, and you would work harder. And he said when he was managing, I think at Montreal, he said he didn't pick one of the players, and the player come up to him during his meal, and he was like, "Why didn't you pick me?" and was quite confrontational. And he said he found that very hard to deal with. He said, wanted to finish his meal and that he'd speak to him later and stuff. But I think that's kind of symptomatic of like where we are in the world as well. Like, you look at other places outside of football, the workplace, millennials have come through, then there's the next generation. And realistically, these guys, to them, they are dinosaurs, and I don't think it's necessarily about what they know about football.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's more to do with their man management and not necessarily fully understanding the things that make up being a young person today. And I'm 40 next month, so I don't know whether I understand that either. But I think it's clear to me that a 20 or like,
Well, you
15...
don't look 40, so you're doing
Oh, cheers,
all right,
mate. That's all
pretty goddamn good.
all the filter of makeup I'm wearing, mate. But like the difference between say all the awareness of things like mental health, identity, all of these things, and even social media being a prevalent thing in people's lives from a young age. I just don't think these guys understand the psychology in the same way that a younger manager might, and I think that's why like managers like Arteta might be, with a younger team having more of an effect, because he's also played with some of those players that would have been coming through and would have seen some of that. And I think other managers that are doing well are do seem to be a bit more tuned into that. Like, and there's so much more sort of to do with the psychology, and I think the different psychology in terms of who's going to replace him. I did actually see that they'd already spoken to Wayne Rooney. I don't know whether the club had, but obviously he'd been asked, and he said he's really obviously committed to Derby, but Everton would be a really hard job to turn down just because of his connection to the club. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was. We saw a similar thing with Frank Lampard, didn't we?
Well, that's it. Anthony's saying
Frank
Lampard will get the job. Do you think he's got a chance?
Well, I think like Lampard from Derby to Chelsea, that's his project, isn't it? Whereas from Derby to Everton is more of a Wayne Rooney move, because that's kind of the move back. So I think Lampard deserves another chance. I don't think he did a terrible job at Chelsea.
Hell of a gamble for Everton.
Yeah, but I think it is, Lampard's probably the right sort of player, because he is, again, someone who those younger players will be aware of in terms of their generation growing up as young footballers. They will know who he is. He will have kind of awareness of what those young players kind of need, and he will put those things in place. So if the issue has been with Benitez that he's not been able to manage, then someone like Lampard is obviously going to be much more suited to that, I think.
I think as a neutral, I would love to see Rooney come in and manage Everton. I'd love to see how it goes.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see
to
see who comes in and how and if they're going to turn it around, because I mean it's not going very well.
They can't spend any money, can they? They've spent all their money.
Even if you look at Man United, they're still having problems from their last manager, and everyone came, I thought Rangnick's going to do the business, but it's just not that easy, really, is it?
Okay,
well,
here's
really
an honest one. Put your hands up, lads. Who'd ever heard of him? Because I haven't.
No,
Ralph?
I heard of him briefly.
Yeah, I'd heard of him only because I watched a documentary thing about him. It was on Klopp, and I think it was a Klopp thing, and ended up watching stuff about him.
Oh yeah, they've got like the same mentor, haven't they? Like,
yeah. But I had heard of him also because he'd been linked to Spurs as well. We were linked to him, and we linked to absolutely everybody, and I can remember looking at as well. I think before that was that guy from the documentary.
I was linked to Spurs,
Linked to actually, I saw a good thing on the Athletic the other day about your League Cup loss, about Spurs. And they had a clip, a YouTube clip, like show much like this, and the guys on there, they were saying they wouldn't be surprised if Conte goes sooner rather than later because, yeah, it's not going terrifically well, and you just get fed up. And
Is it not?
that's what, look. This was on the Athletic, mate. So
Well, they, you know, I think they're just playing at the moment. I think that
they
we'll
weren't
see.
very
I mean,
happy.
there's a
put it
lot of
that way.
Spurs fans moaning at
very
the moment
happy.
that we haven't spent any money, but there's still 2 weeks of a transfer window left, or just under.
And also that other article that I sent you,
Which one? You sent loads. Go on.
Tanga. Is it? No, it's not Tanga. What's your record signing called again?
And Ndebele.
Ndombele.
And Dombele, yeah.
Yeah. That's
Well,
pretty
that's a
bad.
fucking. We could have a whole podcast about what's going on with him.
There's
Interesting.
a difficult one for Levy because there's a lot of dead wood at Spurs to get rid of.
But that Ndombele, he was decent.
He's
decent.
probably the most
Yeah, but
talented
so was
footballer.
Pepe, and look what you did to him.
He's a phenomenal
Pepe just scored in the
footballer.
African nations. He's
Oh,
not
what do you do?
I
Great.
don't even go. He's terrible.
Pepe has
Wow.
had a better career at Arsenal than Ndombele has had at Spurs, though. Yeah.
I think Pepe's whoop, but you know my thoughts on him.
idea.
He's probably, in terms of footballing ability, Ndombele is probably the best at our club. He's phenomenal, but he just can't be asked. Like I don't know. I really don't know.
As-
Do you not think we'd like the talk of changing
poor
managers?
man's
Though,
Pogba,
what I was
isn't
going
it?
to say is like, don't you think it's weird now how
It's now
a
3
manager can
managers.
come in and he can blame everything on the previous regime, and he has to have his own signings and he has to have windows before he can address those things. Now, I think most squads have enough depth and there might be 1 or 2 things you can change. But for me, I think managers should be able to come into a team, not blame the previous regime, not say I've got to do this, but work with what they've got. And actually
Well, I think
show an
Conte's doing
improvement
a
with what
great
they've-
job.
And I think Conte has done that. With
he's
what
done an
he's done,
amazing
he's put
job.
in-
So
but I think
we're
what I
still
heard him
unbeaten.
say-
We're still unbeaten since he's been here in the Premier League, and I think we're behind.
But not in the
I think
League
we'd be
Cup.
third. Yeah, since Conte's come in, we'd be
I
third.
think what I heard him say though is that it's going to be very difficult for him without the backing and the financial investment from the club for him to get the players he wants. So whether that is what they've interpreted as an early sign of, he's not going to stick around, that might not be the case.
I think it's paper talk. You know, it is difficult to sign players in January. And the only teams that have actually made a move, you've had Villa who are still spending some of that Grealish money left over, and Newcastle just fucking that splattergun approach of shitloads of money. They're
Get some of
just
that
all over the
internet
place.
money.
Well, they got Trippier in, didn't they? And then that Trippier's agent is Chris Wood's agent. And
Well, there
the
you go,
talk
look.
was that the reason they got Chris Wood is because when they signed Trippier, they alerted him to the
Maybe.
odds.
I
There you
think
go.
that too,
On to
if
Newcastle.
you wanted to stay in the Premier League and have a couple of Warriors in there, they're quite good.
Actually, Linton once said on this show that he would take Chris Wood.
I think brilliant. I
at
think Chris Wood's
Tottenham.
good. I said as a backup for Harry, I think he's perfect.
You said he was
Scores
going to
goals.
replace
He's
Harry with
fight
him,
to
didn't
stay in
you?
the
You did
Premier
drop
League.
Harry for Chris
Oh,
Wood, I think.
yeah.
They're not bad signings if you want a team to fight the way to survival.
I don't know. I don't think.
I like
think
Chris
Chris Wood is probably one of the worst strikers in the league.
I sent you a thing the other day about Chris Wood. I think he's great. The players that he
Is he?
outscored last season.
Oh,
And I
one
sent you a
season.
list, didn't I? No, mate, he does score goals in a not so good Burnley team. He's just a good Premier League striker. I keep every time I come on this podcast to talk about fucking Chris Wood. No, I think he's good, and I think Newcastle that's a good bit of business. 25 million though for a 31-year-old. Wow,
Yeah,
that's a
that
lot
does-
of money.
I'm
But-
laughing. money, ain't they? They've got the money.
Next force Man City has was Dick up and one chop.
Oh,
those
Dick
were
off.
the days.
I always
Yeah.
liked Dick off because he was an Arsenal
God,
legend.
Yeah, what I'd say is you had no idea what was coming in the next game of those two. Paolo one chop would be.
It's all
got a
legs.
similar first touch
Oh,
to
like
Lukaku.
the
all
most
legs.
leggy dribbler ever. You
It's
just be like,
hilarious.
at that time as well, you'd never seen a dribbler like.
I
one
remember
shot
when he scored a
in
goal.
like a professional team. Do you know what I mean?
He was playing for Derby, and he scored this great goal at Old
Yeah.
Trafford. I can remember watching it. It was like going to fall over about 5
yeah.
times.
Yeah.
I was like,
It's
wonderful goal.
Paolo one
Never
chop.
seen a dribbler like it.
There was a whole bag full of City players at that stage, and you had no idea how they were going to perform from one game to another.
Do you think those kind of players these days wouldn't even be able to hack it, would they?
No.
They
Well-
wouldn't even be able to get across the pitch.
It's like, the era of Carlton Cole and Carlton Palmer and players
Yeah.
like that, wasn't it? And you think, and he got
That was
some
the best
England-
era,
he
though.
got
To be
England-
fair,
he got England caps.
there you go.
Yeah, I
there you
remember
go.
that's Graham Taylor's nailing Graham Taylor's coffin, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Putting playing Carlton Palmer and taking Gary Lineker off for Alan Smith when they needed a
Yeah.
goal. But
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But
the
I have
one.
to say, Smudger Smith is one of my favourite commentators. I'm not going to take anything away from him.
I hate
Yeah.
him. I hate him.
I mean,
No, I
he's
really
one of
like
those
him.
where
He's-
So
he
biased.
was one of my first
He's one of
favourite
those
players. Like,
Commentators like a golden age voice.
he was
You
one of
know,
my first
there's-
favourite players because obviously the '89 season was one of the first seasons that I fully remember. So he was top
Was that
scorer
with
that
Alan
season. Like,
Sunderland as well.
I just remember
no,
his
that's
goal
just
in
before
the-
my era. That really,
in the
like
cup
Charlie
winners-
Nicholas is probably the first sort of play, like '87ish. So I was probably about
His-
5, so quite young. But
his volley in the Cup Winners' Cup.
yeah, it's a great goal.
That's one of my earliest memories.
I,
And
I
obviously
like,
Arsenal won
I
something.
like
then,
golden
because
voice
Spurs won,
commentators, cricket or football.
Do you know what I've enjoyed?
You know, in the golden age
Go
of like Radio 5 Live, you know, had golden voices like Jimmy Arnfield and David Pleat and, you know, real artists of commentators. And I think Alan Smith is one of the, you know, the last of that, you know, wonderful commentators.
He's an
in the game.
artist. An artist.
But you know, and then you get dickheads like Steve McManaman. How the hell?
Oh,
How is that imbecile ever put on the radio?
he's
I think
definitely
Michael
a
Owen
massive
though as
dickhead.
well is another
And
one
Michael
for
Owen,
me.
he's a bonehead as well.
He's not on anything anymore, Michael Owen. I haven't seen him
Oh, totally.
No, he's
commentating.
still on BT,
Wow.
isn't he?
Wow. No, I don't think so.
Alan Smith's you know, he's an artist when it comes to being a commentator. I mean, you just put complete idiots on, like, you know.
To be
I
fair, Carragher and Neville are starting to piss me off now. I'm getting a bit done with
Yeah,
I
them
think
as
the
well.
difference is like they used to do like media training in some way. Like it obviously was much more detailed because if you wanted to go like look at Lineker, if you wanted to go into broadcasting after football, you'd realise there was a route and you'd have to do some sort because he was quite. I think was it maybe Desmond Lynam or someone he got quite
Yeah.
close to,
Yeah.
and he like
Some
used to
sort
route,
of
like-
training, some sort of
Yeah,
was,
yeah, I
mentoring.
think
It
whereas
was a
now,
BBC
it's like,
training,
you've
the
quit,
way-
let's just get that guy on. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? He was a
Can he
footballer, let's
talk?
Get him on.
Can he talk? Well, he's a bit shaky in the first few shows, and then he gets it. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
you know. I saw Ashley Cole the other day, and I was like, actually, he's got
It's
quite
quite
good from
refreshing
the.
though, isn't it? You
His
know, like-
first one, he was terrible. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm nervous. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And now he's like, he's got to it.
But it is quite refreshing to see. But and I think that's the thing with Gary Neville when he first started commentating and being a pundit. It was like this guy knows what he's talking about, and he's like, you know, he was actually saying it as it was for a while. And I think a lot of people were really taken to him. And it just seems over the last like couple of years, he just seems to have fallen into the same trap as all of them, and just
so
I think
far
the key
behind.
thing-
like
Alan Smith is articulate and intelligent. The likes of Gary Neville and what's his name?
Carragher spit at fans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
How did he get away with that? How did
Yeah.
he get away with that? You know?
And Carragher, Roy Keane, and Gary Neville. All they do is they go to the lowest
Oh, Roy
common denominator, of the tabloid press, and they appeal to the punter who reads the Daily Star. You know, they're not artists.
But it's like the talk sport thing as well, isn't it? It's just like it's like the Alex Jones of like, you know, football punditry where
And let's not get
it's just
started on
about-
Jamie O'Hara.
Oh yeah.
God
they're
almighty.
they're tabloid commentators.
I tell you who I do like.
Broadsheet
I
commentators,
like
which are Alan Smith.
I like Ali McCoist. I think he's been
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
No,
good.
he annoyed me again
Oh,
on the
I love him.
cover.
He's really
I like
good.
Alan McCoy.
Alongside
FA Cup.
John Champion. He's been alongside John
Champion's
Champion,
brilliant,
quite a
yeah.
bit, and I think they've both been brilliant. He's been really good. But
No,
fuck
he's
me,
not-
Jamie
yeah.
O'Hara. Let's not talk about him. He doesn't deserve anyone's time. You know.
He's ex-Spurs, though, isn't he? He's always
He is, but,
Do you know what I heard
Wow.
today though? Danny Ceballos actually played more games for Arsenal than O'Hara ever did for Spurs.
Yeah, he
And
never really
somehow
played for us.
Just thinks he's your spokesman, doesn't he? Like that's the problem. Like,
That's
he
the
does.
embarrassing thing. He does, mate. He's a
agree.
Spurs fan, but he's mate. How has he got a job on the radio?
But that's what I'm
Like,
saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like the only reason they've got that is because he appeals to a certain.
I
demographic
think
that
we
is-
should
He was
start.
so average, it was untrue.
We should start a crowdfunding campaign to get one of us to become a
the
commentator.
new Jamie O'Hara. It has to be
the
Linton.
new Jamie O'Hara or the new Steve McManaman, or even put us in the bracket of Alan Smith. You know what I mean? Let's get us there. Let's do it. And I'll tell you
I think you
what.
could just fucking put a potato in the commentary box and do a better job than McManaman, to be fair. So Yeah, maybe just put a potato on there.
Yeah,
You had it here first, guys.
more insightful.
Get,
Yeah.
Right, that's it. That's crowdfunding. Get the potato onto commentary, and we'll see how he gets on. Are we going to give the potato a name?
Yeah,
Dunno.
Potato.
I thought Wayne Rooney was the person who looked closest to a potato.
Yeah.
I know.
Can
You
you
turned
imagine
on Wayne Rooney.
Rooney
You were bigging him up. You were
think he's
bigging him
done a
up
wonderful-
earlier.
I think he's done a wonderful job at Derby. He's still Pillock, but
You're
he's
just
done
calling him a
wonderful job at
potato
Derby.
now. Oh, dude.
Yeah, he looks like a potato.
We've stooped down to low level jibes now.
Oh,
You
but
heard it here.
Who do you think of a football player looks closer to a potato than Wayne Rooney?
No, that's a good point, actually. He does look a bit like a potato.
Oh, there's got to be one.
I'm trying to think of someone who's bald and got a big head.
Maybe Alex from Chelsea. Used to play for Chelsea.
Oh, yeah.
Got that potato head about him, hasn't he?
Yeah, you got to have that kind of like, because potatoes aren't all fully rounded. They're kind of like,
Yeah.
Who was that
yeah.
guy who played for Arsenal? Senderos. He was a potato.
Oh, yeah,
head.
yeah. Seagan as
Lushny.
well.
Lushny, he's big potato heads. Well, on that note, we should leave that because I'm really sorry, guys. We were on to some amazing content there. Just to recap, if you missed it, we were describing what footballers had heads that looked like potatoes. Join in next week for when we look for footballers who have heads that look like chickens. Get back here on a 6-1 football show. Guys, it's been
Luke
an honor and
Chadwick.
pleasure having you again. Hopefully we can come on next week for some more good banter. We got into comments. I wasn't even looking at it. We were like, who's the best commentators? That was great. That was just natural. It was good. I like it. If you're enjoying the show, enjoying the content, please like and subscribe. FTV Sports. This has been 6-1 Football Show on FTV Sports. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen.
Cheers, mate.
And you're going to
Cheers,
say
thanks,
it,
Wayne.
say it,
Thank you.
Linton? You're going to say it, Linton, before we go?
Up the spur. There we go.